Uh, all right. I'm sure more people will trickle in, but just want to make sure that that we respect everyone's time. Welcome everybody. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll just quickly introduce SAMA, the Serbian American Medical Association. For those of you who don't know, it's a nonprofit organization that was started in 2009 with the primary aim to improve healthcare conditions in Serbia and the Balkans and as well as to foster medical education and promote collaboration amongst Serbian American physicians and medical professionals. I just checked the website. We have to date raised $1.3 million, which has been donated directly to healthcare centers and provided medical supplies to healthcare centers in Serbia and the Balkans. Next, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. David Norris. Dr. Norris is an anesthesiologist who earned his degree from the University of Kansas and then went on to complete residency and fellowship in cardiovascular anesthesia at Vanderbilt University. He also earned his MBA from Wichita State University while practicing as an anesthesiologist. And in what little free time he had between all of those achievements, he has published multiple books and articles, and as well as a podcast with the mission to help physicians gain the business intelligence they need to have their own practice and the intelligence that we don't always learn in medical school and residency. Dr. Norris, please, you can take it away.
All right. Well, it's good to be here today, guys. I thank you for inviting me. Um, I don't know how you guys, you want me to share my screen? I got some slides. Let's find that. Where is that? I don't see a share screen on mine. Did you? Oh, there it is. All right. All right.
There we go. I can see your screen.
Excellent. Well, like she said, I'm David Norris. I'm been in practice for, oh geez, over 20 years now. Uh, Entered private practice right out of residency. And then I started asking the questions that I wanted answers to when I was in residency in medical school. But I was asking the elders in my group, and some of them didn't have what I felt were satisfactory answers. And what I found is if you start asking questions, you start, well, if you're asking about that, why don't you do that job? So I then got elected into positions of leadership. And then I quickly realized I didn't know what I was doing. So that's why I went back to school and got my MBA. Every weekend, every Saturday, I sat in a class from 8 to 5 for 2.5 years. I hadn't been in a classroom since undergrad because I didn't go to lecture in med school. I just had note service and lived in the library. So it was a shock, but it was a great experience, and it helped me prepare me to run a practice, I think, more effectively. And now my mission and purpose is to help physicians improve their business intelligence by through education and coaching, consulting work. Now, tonight I've been asked to talk about, private practice, some of the pros and cons of either private practice or entering into an employment arrangement with a group or a hospital or whatever. And they both have pros and cons. So, I think if you join private practice, you're pretty much owning your own shop, or more importantly, you're probably owning the shop with some other partners, people who have an equal voice with you. And this is where I think private practice is probably the hardest. If you don't join a group where everybody's like-minded, it can be really challenging and frustrating. Um, it's like having, you know, you join a group like in my group, there were 22 partners, so I had 21 wives or spouses, right? And we all had to get along and figure out how we wanted to go. So I have a hard time sometimes with my wife. We haven't figured out what we want to do. Imagine trying to get 22 people on the same page. But it also is very rewarding. On the other option you have is you could go work for someone else. You can trade your time for money, not gain any equity, not gain any return on the investment that you put in that company, but you will get hopefully a fair wage for the amount of work that you do. Now, there are a number of pros, I think, for private practice. The first one is an autonomy in decision making. As a private practitioner, you tend to have more greater control in your practice's operations. You're going to play an active role and be hands-on in the decision making, and you also will be able to shape your patient care or your approach to patient care. You also probably have greater flexibility in your scheduling, your treatment plans, and even your business strategies. How do you want to grow your practice? Where do you want to see it be in 5 or 10 years? Do you want to expand? Do you want to grow a footprint, or do you want to get niche and focus in on, a few disease processes or a specific patient population that you really find rewarding in treating? In private practice, I think that affords you a greater opportunity to do that. Um, Now there is a potential for higher income in private practice as well. You can generate higher profits, maybe because of lower overhead costs, or your ability to kind of get better rates. Depends on how you negotiate. But there are also maybe opportunities for additional income through ancillary services. So if you set up your own uh, clinic, you could have lab fees, x-ray fees. You could then or do partnerships or buy into freestanding surgery centers or, if they still exist, physician-owned hospitals. Those private practice tends to allow you or afford you the opportunity to make those kind of investments. And then I think another important thing with private practice, it offers you a great opportunity for professional growth. You're going to have, I think, more opportunities to grow as a person, as a leader, as a physician in private practice because the job's just going to force you to grow out in those regards, if you will. Um, and then I think in private practice, you're going to have a little more control upon the impact on the community you're going to have. Um, you know, Physicians in private practice, at least in my city, the ones that tend to play the significant role in the local healthcare community, the direction they go to, where they want to see the changes happen, come from those private leaders. They also have a greater ability to contribute to the development and providing essential services that may not be available through larger organizations or even government-run facilities. I think, for example, we have a very large medical society in my county. We have 1,200, I think 1,200 members, 1,100 members. And one of the things that society does is they have a program called Project Access, and that's where physicians will sign up and donate their time, or they'll say, I'm willing to donate 12 surgeries, or the MRI suite. They'll do so many MRIs on through the charitable organization Project Access. And then physicians, who may have a low income or non-insured individual, they will send that patient to Project Access. And then that patient will then be treated by physicians who are donating that time or that energy. And that thing's really run by physicians in private practice and, kind of really does help the community and they have a positive impact on the community. That's not to say that the physicians who are employed um, don't participate in that or get benefit from it as well. It's just there are far more physicians in private practice who help spearhead that event. And then finally, as a as a boss, you get to shape your culture. You get to shape the values of your practice and the people that you're working with and that work for you. And then finally, I think when you, as a group of physicians, go through a struggle, or you go through a building phase, or you go through a challenge, it does tend to help build camaraderie and strengthen bonds, and you can really develop some really good friendships through that. And I see that happen more frequently in the throes of fighting to be remain independent versus those who tend to be employed. Um, Now there are some cons. Everything is a pro and con. There are some cons to private practice. And the first is financial uncertainty. Um, if you are in private practice, you are uh, you are at greater risk for fluctuations in unpredictable patient volumes or flows, changes in reimbursement but those tend to come unilaterally and hits everybody at once, at least in my field. And then economic downturns, depending on your specialty, could also impact you. But that's not to say it wouldn't affect you if you're in the employed model. It just might hit you a little slower, not as hard. Additionally, there are startup costs. If you're going to enter a private practice, start your own, or you're going to buy into a practice, you will have some costs to that, and that does take capital. And if you're short on capital, that can be quite challenging. Um, And then finally, there's administrative headaches, and they can be big headaches. And they're not the kind of headaches that we're trained to deal with as physicians. You have managing individuals, people, like human resources issues that you'll be plagued with in private practice can be, for me at least, have been the biggest headaches. How to deal with difficult employees, or how hard do you want to fight to make everybody happy and real, or do you still want to make certain that everybody thinks everything's fair, or do they perceive it all fair? And then finally, you have the legal side of that. Like, what does the law say you have to do? What does the law say you can't do? And ignorance of that law doesn't forgive you. If you don't know and you violate it, you could still be liable. So those are some of the biggest issues I found in running my own practice, were the administrative headaches. Not to, and on top of that, then you have the whole accounting or revenue cycle management side of it, right? That's another headache in and of itself. You have the accounting side of it. If you're going to run your own practice, I strongly recommend you become very familiar with the general accounting principles. You don't need to know everything, but you need to understand what a credit and debit is. You need to understand how to read an income statement and a balance sheet. And if you don't, you're going to make mistakes. And so you really need to invest some time in learning that stuff. And then in today's day and age, you're going to need IT, and that always seems to get expensive, and everybody's trying to hack you or hold you hostage, with ransomware and whatnot. All of those are potential threats. Now they happen in the private sector side as well. It's just that they don't your problem, they're somebody else's problem. And then we have the legal issues that I spoke of earlier that deal with HIPAA compliance, med mal issues, contract negotiations. They all can be unfun. But they also are learning opportunities if you don't know what they are. And the more you learn, the bigger your repertoire becomes, and then the easier problems later on down the road will be for you to handle, and you'll have a better set of tools to deal with those problems in the future. So even though they're cons, I still view some of them as pros or great opportunities for personal growth and learning. Some other cons to private practice, again, are going to be payer relations and reimbursement rates. In America, we have, a gazillion, it feels like, private insurers, and they all want to pay you bottom dollar, or they want to delay their claims, or they want to play games in order to keep their money before they pay you. They look for any opportunity for you to not get paid. They deny, and then you have to fight and for what you are contractually obligated or owed. That becomes a real hassle and a headache.
Horatio, the meeting already started.
And So that would probably be your second biggest headache. And then when you do enter into these contracts, you're going to constantly be monitoring, or you or you're going to hire somebody or farm this out to a third party. You're going to manage your reimbursement rates, make certain you're getting paid what you should be paid. And then you're going to always constantly be working on getting better rates if you can. Um, you know, most of these contracts, 2 to 3 years in length. So it's going to take quite a bit of energy, and somebody in your office is going to need to stay on top of these contracts because some contracts, these guys are sneaky and they'll say, well, you only have so many windows. Like you know, you have no, the contract renews every year or every other year, and you have like a 30-day window to say, hey, we want to initiate a renegotiation of our rates. If you miss that window, then they say, sorry, you're outside the terms of the contract. We're not going to negotiate. And they'll play games like that, and they'll try and slow roll their decisions on that. So you just have to be aware of what's in your contracts and have somebody staying on top of them. And what we did, and I told my office was, I need you to go through every contract and I want you to write down every deadline that we have coming up. And then we need to review that regularly to make certain that we're not going to miss anything when in fact, when we want to say, hey, we want to renegotiate your rates because we're not happy with them. Our expenses, our costs have gone up. Yours need to, you need to pay us more for that. So that is another, I guess, a con because you're going to have to deal with that as a physician leader in a private practice. Now, there are some pros of employment. I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think you have stability and income. That is until they fire you. But I mean, as an employee, you can expect regular paychecks. They're going to pay you based upon what they feel, how many RVUs or whatever revenue you should generate for them. And this kind of predictable income is going to be easier for you when you want to make financial decisions in terms of your personal budget and your personal financial plans. So if you're employed and you say like you're a specialist, such as a surgeon, and like we had a huge snowstorm come in, surgeries were canceled, patients were like, I'm not coming in, you lose that day's worth of work. That would hit your bottom line for that month as a private practice physician, but as an employed one, you might you probably aren't going to get hurt, or you're not going to see a dip in your income until maybe the end of the year if you don't get your RVs caught up or whatever. So there's greater stability in terms of the predictability of your income. However, just because you have that doesn't mean you have job security, and it doesn't always mean that you're going to have continued employment. Sometimes practices or organizations will just say, you know what, this isn't a service line we want, and I've seen that happen in my city with three different specialties. They got one of the clinics here was multi-specialty, and they eliminated three different specialty service lines, and they just said, we just don't want you in the clinic anymore. We don't think you're worth the time. Now, the good thing was for that, because they terminated it, they did not enforce the non-compete. They could have enforced the non-compete and said, you know what, we just don't want this practice, the service line. We don't think you're adding value. And we're not going to let you work in the 50-mile, 100-mile radius or whatever that non-compete is for 2 or 3 years. So that's the other thing with being employed. If you're gonna sign a contract, read that non-compete real close. Right now, most non-competes, at least in my state, are upheld. You can try and fight them, but they don't go very far. So really know what that if you are employed, know what that non-compete language says. How long, how far, what can you do, what can't you do? And that's something you really got to watch out for. Now, as an employed physician, you're probably going to have less admin work. You're not going to have all those HR headaches, which is nice. If you don't like that, you're not going to have to deal, with Sarah getting all upset because somebody said something in the break room that upset her. If you own the practice, you might have to deal with that. But if you don't, you just kind of you can shrug your shoulders and say, suggest you talk to somebody in HR. Um, but the other issue is you probably won't have a say as who they put in your clinic. Okay, you don't are probably not involved in the hiring nor the firing decisions. They just say, congratulations, you have this new medical assistant, or you have a new nurse or a new scheduler. And whether or not you get along or you think they're competent in their job becomes a real hassle for you. And then as an employed physician, you're going to have to fight if you want them moved or terminated. That can be quite challenging and can become a headache for you. Now, some cons again are going to be like we just said, you're going to have less control of a lot of decisions. You may or may not have much control in the patients you see, which patients get assigned to you, or even your schedule, however many patients they want you to see in a day or how late you're going to work. And you may not even have any say in the call schedule or assignment of duties or managerial requirements. I know many physicians who have been employed and then they were a short team, maybe three docs, and one leaves, and now it's two docs, and the call schedule adjusts for that, and now your call increases by 50% and your pay doesn't. Um, so remember, I would consider that a con, and doing more call and not getting more money, that's a con to me, but it's up to you, however you view it. But those are the sort of risks you're going to take when you decide to be employed. Um, so let's talk a little bit about, if you want to go into private practice, if you're going to start off on your own, the first thing you want to do is assess market demand and competition out there. How easy is it for you to get yourself up and running? Are there a lot of people out there doing what you're doing, or are there not that many? Um, and then I think the next one thing you really need to do is really assess your personal readiness for going into private practice. Because, being in private practice, starting your own business, doing all the paperwork, getting all the everything in line, that's going to require a lot of time and money and emotional investment. Really, you need to ask yourself, do I have the drive, the passion, and the resilience? And it's really resilience to manage all these challenges that come with you at you as an entrepreneur. And it doesn't matter if you're a physician entrepreneur or you're owning your own business or trying to start your own business. There are headaches and pains every day. And you just really have to think, do I really want to put up with that? Is what's at the end of that road really what I want? I mean, it's like the marshmallow test, right? We all passed the marshmallow test because we got through med school, or into med school through med school. We have that delayed gratification, but when we get out, we're kind of like, okay, I want my marshmallow now, but the next marshmallow is on further down the road, and are we willing to put up with what we need to do for that delayed gratification down the road? And being an entrepreneur, being your own boss is hard, and it doesn't matter how many times I've done this, whether it was when we started uh, our rental real estate investment business, or just last year I started a car lot with some other investors. The headaches and the emotional sort of frustration you have sometimes, it happens. But the good thing is, even though the headaches came along with this new business venture, I'd already been through them before, so they weren't as bad. They're still there, they're still unpleasant, but at least I could just say I've gotten through this once before, I can get through it again. But you really need to assess and ask yourself, do I have what it takes? Am I willing to put up with all of the negative side of this to get to the rainbow at the end of on the other at the end of the other side? Um, and remember, I don't think I can stress this enough. The emotional impact of being an entrepreneur, that's what I think what really kills a lot of people. It can be emotionally taxing. And when you add that stress of Am I going to meet budget? Am I going to be able to pay payroll on top of I have to take care of all these patients? It can be quite daunting. But it can be done. People have done it, and a lot of people continue to do it every day. I think the important thing is to get into a group or network with other physicians who have gone through that or are going through that, and kind of you can kind of lean on each other for emotional support and guidance. Um, and then, if you're ready professionally as well, do you have the necessary business knowledge, acumen? If not, do you know where you can get it? It's okay not to have it, but at least do the assessment of yourself and determine where your deficiencies are and be willing to fix and work on your deficiencies, or at least be willing to say, I've identified this deficiency. I don't know that it's a great return on my investment, but I know somebody I can trust and that I can lean on. As you begin to think about, going into private practice, these are the sort of things that you're going to want to build out in your team. And then licensing, credentialing, and payer enrollment, these are all painful things. It's just paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. And you have to do the same paperwork over and over again. Um, if you're going to go into private practice, it doesn't really matter. Either you'll be doing it or you're going to have an office manager or you'll farm this out to somebody else. But even if as an employed physician, you're still going to have to sign all these papers, but somebody else is going to be monitoring the deadlines, and somebody else as an employed physician will be taking care of the submittals and making certain everything's done like it's supposed to. Whereas if it's your own shop, you're going to have to either do it yourself or rely on an office manager. We rely on a manager. A young lady takes care of all that. She does a great job. But you just got to find the right person who can stay on top of all that paperwork. Now, then the next steps you're going to do is you're going to want to build a good business plan, right? You're going to need to develop a roadmap where you are and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. You're going to need to set goals, do budgets and financial projections, and then really, I think in today's age, you really need to develop good, strong marketing plan and strategies. And when I say marketing, I just mean how are you going to get the word out to people that you're taking care of, doing great care of business. And I don't think it's wrong to brag about yourself. It's better if patients brag about you, but it's okay in the beginning to say, I take great care of patients, come see me, and then eventually transition to the patients say they take great care of me, go see them. But always be thinking about how do I continue to market and manage my image, manage my standing in the community, and don't ever take that for granted. Always be cognizant of the decisions you make, how you act, what you say, either in the hospital, the clinic, or if you sit on committees, how your behavior there will be played out into what others say about you in the community and how that can impact referral patterns, basically. And then really do your market research in the needs of the community, and try and figure out where some gaps are, and if you want to try and fill that gap. Patient demographics, any sort of niches that can give you a nice little hold on the market, if you will. Then, in order to open up a business, you're going to need capital. Capital comes in two forms. You have it in cash or you borrow it. And you borrow it either by borrowing money as a liability from a bank, or you sell part of your business to an investor as equity, and now they own part of your business. Your source of funding is an important decision, and you'll need to really think about, do I want to borrow the money? And what do those terms look like? And am I comfortable with them? Or am I willing to bring on an investor if I have to? Or if you're a bunch of you all going in together, or you're buying into a practice, then where do you get those funds? Um, think long and hard about where you want to place your office, ask around, do your research before you negotiate office leases, um, and make certain that the terms are what you want. And for those, they all going to differ geographically in terms of what is acceptable, and what the standard is. If you're going to go into Kansas, I think the terms of an office lease is going to be different than, say, in New York City. So go do some research, meet with a couple different agents, or talk to some practices who are leasing space and try and get their assistance or at least insight onto things that you want in a lease or don't want in a lease. And then finally, you want to build nice, strong relationships with, it depends on your specialty, but hospital leadership, it's always good to know the hospital leaders. Make certain that you meet the general practitioners in your community, the specialists. Begin to really kind of network, see how they can help you, and more importantly, how you can help them. If you're brand new to the community, don't say, "Hey, I'm here, send patients to me." Go say, "Hey, I'm here. How can I help you? What needs of yours aren't being met, and maybe I might be able to do that." And then I would encourage you to get involved in societies, particularly if it's a large municipal area, like here, like our county society. We have, like I said, 1,100 physicians in it. And that's just a nice way to meet physicians that you might not otherwise ever meet or see. Like I, as an anesthesiologist, never talked to pediatricians. I never talked to really anybody outside of the OR, or radiologist. But when I go to these meetings, I'm able to meet some of the other physicians and other specialties that just I wouldn't have the opportunity to know. One, they're great people, they're really neat, and two, it gives you insight as to what's really going on in this in the city or the state, or the market, and kind of gives you great insight, and then you guys can all hopefully work together to make it better for everybody. Now, going into private practice always has costs. You're going to have some major expenses. No, I think number one is going to be rent. Your rent of your space, or if you're buying it, will be the mortgage. But you have to have a place to operate. You'll have that. You'll have utilities, and then of course, any medical equipment or supplies. You'll need to be able to budget for and account for. Whether that's, office chairs or exam tables or even specialized equipment you might use in the office, that all adds up. And you're going to really need to think about what you need and what you want, and more importantly, what you can afford. And then the next item will be your salaries. And that's going to be, for at least in my group as an anesthesiologist, that's our largest because we're a service and that's all we do. We don't have an office. Uh, our largest expense line is our salaries for our providers. But we also have costs for administrative costs. So you have office staff, billers, coders, schedulers, all those individuals. They aren't going to work for you for free. So you're going to need to be able to pay them and figure out how much you can pay them or what you want to pay them. And then insurance coverages, you're going to definitely want to be insured out the wazoo. You're going to need a med mal. Get a good med mal policy if you can. Read that very carefully. And I would shop that around. And I wouldn't always go with the least expensive med mal policy. My recommendation is go with the best rated policy with the most positive um, uh, consumer reviews. So if there are some medical malpractice entities out there that really put their interests above the physicians, I'll just say that. Though they're more apt to settle if it's going to cost them more to settle it, than pay it out. Whereas it goes a strike on us. There are others that'll say, "Doctor, you want to fight? We'll fight. Doesn't matter. You want to fight it? We'll fight it." So shop those around. It might cost you twice as much, but uh, if you're ever named in a suit, you want the best, most aggressive carrier possible. Trust me. Not that I've ever been named, knock on wood, but I have seen other physicians who have, and I've seen both sides, and that would be a policy that I would not skimp on. I would, if the A plus triple A rated policies 10,000 a year, I would buy that over, the A at, 7,000. That's just me. And then the other ones you're going to want, you're going to have your cybersecurity, your disability, your health, life, all those insurances if you're going to offer those. And then technology needs, pen and paper was pretty inexpensive, but now computers are in here and they seem to cost a lot of money. So you're going to have those sort of EMR costs and just be aware of their limitations. Know what's in those agreements when you purchase them, if you do, and understand what they will and will not do, what you can and cannot get out of them, and you know, make certain you understand what your switching costs would be if you decide to switch. We've switched EMRs. It's a huge pain, um, but it was worth it. But it was challenging. And then, of course, scheduling software. You want these are tools, and but they cost money. And just make certain that what you spend, you get enough value for. This one thing that irritates me is when these sales reps for these systems they come and say, "Hey, this is an ROI. If you buy this EMR, you're going to get an ROI of this." And I always argue with them, it's not an ROI because ROI stands for return on investment, and I don't own the software. I'm leasing it. I don't own the computers. I'm leasing all that. So really, it's just a return on the cost. Don't call it an investment because it's not. And the minute I stop paying you, it's gone. So, if an investments don't work that way, you actually own an investment. But anyway, I'm on a soapbox. Essential personnel. I think this is real important. When you begin to go into private practice, you really need to spend a long time thinking about the kind of people you want working in your practice. Okay. And I think number one, your biggest one is going to be your practice manager for the daily operations of a business. Usually, what's going to happen is they're going to do stuff on the business side that you just don't have time for, you don't have the skill set for. And you're going to really need to lean on them, but you're also going to entrust them with a lot of responsibility. You're going to delegate a lot to them. So you need to decide what kind of person do I want in that job? And what kind of experience do they need? Were we going to be able to trust them to do a good job? And then how do we evaluate the job they're doing? Just because somebody comes highly rated and they're doing well for a while doesn't mean that the performance could begin to slip a little. So you're going to need to be able to figure out a way to, I guess, do performance reviews and make certain that everybody's operating in the level at which you want them to. And it is your job to do that because it's your business and you've employed them. You're also going to want really good billing and coding specialists. Getting a good scheduler is key. Somebody who actually understands how a physician's time can be put together to maximize your revenue per hour, I guess, if you will, while at the same time allowing for good quality patient interaction. Um, and then finally, you're going to need staff, nurses, whoever who can think critically. You want those individuals to say, "Hey, I think there's a problem here. I'm going to bring it to your attention." You want them to be, you don't want them to be afraid to ask you questions. But that also means that you can't be a jerk when they bring you a question that you think they should know the answer to. Okay. It goes both ways. If you want somebody to say, "Hey, I have a concern," or "I think there's an issue here with this patient, I just want to bring it to your attention," realize that they're doing it because it's probably what's in your best interest. Now, whether or not it's something that reaches the level of concern for you versus them is irrelevant, but how you receive that and your demeanor, and how you communicate that back to them, I think is really important. Because really what you're talking about is you're building the culture of the organization that you want. And it starts with you. and your partners if you have partners, but it also then will trickle down to everyone else in the organization. And when you make hires, make certain that you hire someone who can fit your culture. Just because you need a scheduler and you need one now doesn't mean you should go hire the first one. You need to make certain that they actually will fit well. They have the work ethic that you're looking for. They have the people skills or the patient interaction skills that you're looking for. You really spend some time in trying to figure out what values you want in your individuals and what sort of traits that you're looking for. Because some of these people are going to, particularly your patient side, facing side, you're going to need to be really cognizant of how they're perceived or how they're treating your patients. But you also want the back office who never see patients to get along with everybody when their issues do come up. So it can be challenging, but I think if you make the right hires and you hire the right people in the right jobs, it can make your practice a lot easier and a lot more successful. So in order to, I think, to be successful, really work on building those strong relationships, and then build out efficient operational processes and billing processes. And this is, I think, process improvement and analyzing the processes of a private practice. This is where we can get bogged down and we can lose efficiency. And when I say efficiency, I don't mean it to be a negative word like some physicians I think sometimes think of it. Just I don't want to waste any time. We don't want to waste time in the clinic. So we want to make certain that, when we schedule an appointment with a patient, that we've effectively communicated with them what time we want them to show up, we want them to bring with them, what we will discuss with them, what we expect of the visit, and what they can expect of the visit. I think a lot of that operational process improvement stuff really plays into patient satisfaction. And not only with the patient side of it, it also becomes on the business side of it, and the billing processes. If you don't get those right, that can impact patient satisfaction as well. And I mean, my dad, he passed away in December, but he loved his oncologist. He's the first oncologist he had. He just loved him. And then that oncologist retired, and a new one took over, and then they had some changes in the back office, and then the bills started getting messed up. Now, I think the second oncologist he had was a very, very well-trained oncologist, but Dad began to doubt the, I think unfairly, the doctor's ability because the bills were never right. He's like, if he can't get the bills right, how do I know he's treating me right? I'm like, Dad, they're separate. But I think as a patient, as a consumer, you kind of they blend those together and they mesh those together. So it's real important that you spend some time thinking about, you know, what does the patient feel when they walk into my practice? What do they feel? Do they feel warmth? Is it clean, sterile, friendly? Really be cognizant about how you want that patient experience to be, and then develop processes, hire people that reinforce that. Um, and it goes to the back office as well with billing. Make certain that that is done right on the first time. And if a patient calls with a concern about the bill, it's handled appropriately and immediately, without condescension, like my dad experienced sometimes. And then I think really work on, you are the brand, you know, as a physician, you are your brand. Patients come see you either because of what you do or who you do or how you do it, in terms of, you do it fast, you do it well. That's your quality, but they also are going to look for, I think, a little bit of the human touch as well. You're approachable, you friendly, you act like you actually care about what they're going through. That's your brand, and always be cognizant of that. And then don't be afraid to market that, because that's going to help differentiate your practice. We got a bunch of surgeons in this city. They're a handful that I would send a loved one to. I'd send other people to other surgeons, right? But they're only a handful I would send a loved one to. And why is that? Well, one, they're good people, but two, they're good surgeons. There are some good surgeons, there are some good people that are not very good surgeons, and there's some good surgeons that aren't very good people. And so be cognizant of that and remember that, your employees also represent you when they see patients, and that's also part of your branding and marketing. You have to, I think, in private practice, be very aware of that. Now, there are some pitfalls, right? Some mistakes that I think a lot of folks in private practice make. One is underestimating your startup costs and your cash flow needs. And even once you get going, you're going to probably underestimate your cash flow needs. I mean, we would sometimes still have cash flow problems or stresses, even in private practice in a group that's been established for 15 years. It just happens. Um, so just be aware of that. But if you set up a system like a dashboard, or that I has some moving metrics that will help you identify those problems early, you can head them off at the pass, if you will. And I discussed some of that in some of my other talks. Um, Delays in licensing and credentialing, that really bringing on a new provider, some carriers or some hospitals they'll say, yeah, it'll take you 3 months, to get credentialed. I'm like, why does it take so long? It shouldn't take that long, but it does. Or getting your medical license in a state. What I would recommend as youngins, if you're early in your career, if you do have a full unrestricted medical license, I would go ahead and do what is it, the Interstate Medical License Corporation. It's that compact. Not every state participates in it, but once you get approved through them, you can get a license in another state. So if you ever want to move, it becomes a much easier process. So that's something for you to look into or think about. Um, Other pitfalls is I've noticed this with physicians. You view money how you view money. You manage money how you manage money. You know, we might change hats. We might have our doctor hat or like I had a dad hat. I'd have a Cub Scout leader hat. I'd have a small business owner hat. But I tend to view problems the way I view problems because I don't change my glasses. And that's the same thing with finances. If you can't manage your money at home, you probably aren't going to manage it very well in your business. Okay. If you manage it pretty well at home, you're going to probably have that same discipline in your business. So if you're having financial issues personally, I'd really spend some time to get some financial intelligence before you get out and then carry that into the business side because how you approach monies and management of cash flow is just how you do it, whether it's on your business side or personal side. I rarely have I ever seen somebody who's very successful on the business side and they don't have it together personally. Now, I have seen that, but it's usually where they are in a windfall, and eventually that personal life catches up and takes down the business. Okay, I've seen that happen many times. Um, and it'll do you better. You'll have a much easier time in life if you just get the personal financial house in order. Um, Now, I would say pick your hard, right? It's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to own your own shop. But guess what? Med school, getting in there was hard. Getting through med school was hard. Residency, it was fun, but it was hard. All right. I mean, I enjoyed residency. I really did. It was a lot of fun, but it was hard. Life is just hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. But also, guess what? Being an employee is hard. Not having a say. We're taught as physicians, we're kind of trained, to be autonomous thinkers, yet when that's taken away as an employee, that can be hard. Not having control of your schedule or who you see, when you see, or when you're on call, that can be hard. The important thing is that you choose your hard and pick the hard that you can handle. Maybe you can't, maybe you might not have the aptitude for private practice, and that's fine. Um, But if that's a road you want to go down, just realize you've chosen that hard because there's something on the other end of that that you desire more than not doing it. So pick your hard because and once you pick it, I think it becomes easier to deal with. Now, if you ever have any questions about any of this, you feel free to reach out to me. That's my website, davidnorrismdmba.com. On there, you can find links to a number of articles I've written, my podcast, my books, courses, free webinars. If you have questions, just feel free to shoot an email to me. That's my personal email address. That's David at davidnorrismdmba.com. And there's a cell number. You can text me or call. I'm here to help. I want to see you succeed. I want to see more physicians enter and stay in private practice. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is I am the treasurer of the Association for Independent Medicine. We're not a fairly new nonprofit. I think we were formed 2 years ago. And we were formed by a bunch of physicians who were just fed up, and we decided to fight back against not only the incursion of private equity, at least into the anesthesia business and some of the other specialties, but we just think that physicians should be leading the helm or at the helm, leading the driving the ship of healthcare and being the leaders, and that's what we're about. We're about advocacy. We're about fighting we want to help you fight the battles that your state legislature's throwing at you. And that's the other thing in private practice is you want to advocate for yourself because no one else will. Don't Your societies aren't going to do a great job of it. And so if you're not going to do it, join an organization who will go to your state legislature and lobby and advocate for what's best for you in private practice. Um, and that's what AIM, or the Association for Independent Medicine, is about. And we're also about providing education and resources to those who, want to be their own boss and be their own entrepreneurial, see that dream come true. So. Um, Thank you for having me. I hope you learned something. And gave you some food for thought, things you might not have thought about. And I'll open it to questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Norris. That was awesome. I, for one, have never, this was my first introduction to business intelligence in medicine. So I really appreciate the overview. I dropped the link to your website in the chat if anyone wants to check it out. There's some great resources there, including links to books, podcasts, and courses. But I'll open the floor to questions. I myself have a couple, but happy to pass off the mic.
Dr. Norris, hi. Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm a fourth year med student. I'm actually applying into anesthesia. So thank you so much for speaking. One question I had is I've heard the term privatedemic a few times, and I'm not sure like how exactly that meshes the two, like either in academic sphere and private practice. If you could speak a little bit about that.
There are some academic entities where the physician group is wholly owned by the physicians um, through the academic center. It's separate but different. I mean, but part of it. I think like KU Med is that way. The physicians that practice is run by physicians, not the hospital. It's run by practice administrators who have the physician's best interest, and they're really working towards advocating and doing what's best for the physicians. The physicians make the decisions, yet they have the access to all the tech and the resources that an academic center would have. Um, I in those situations, at least the ones I've looked at, it's still kind of an employed model I may still be based on RVU, and I still will have things kind of dictated to me rather than me deciding what I want. And that's why I opted not to go down that route. I did look at it a number of years ago again and just decided, yeah, I just want to do what I want to do. Life's too short to do what someone else wants to do. And I don't mean to be selfish, but it just is.
Thank you.
What does the timeline look like? Like, say you are working in a private practice or you're an employed physician and you're looking to start your own practice. Um, how many years does it take to kind of get into a position where you can actually transition and get up and running?
Well, I think, a lot of that depends upon how quickly you can get the pieces in line. If you're going to break out on your own and open your own thing, um, it's gonna, I would plan credentialing, getting improved by insurances, being able to see those patients or those patients in a network. Um, I would plan to have cash reserves of at least a year, I would think. Maybe a little longer. Now, if you're doing direct primary care, it might be shorter, depending on how many subscribers you could get. But I do know a lot of guys who've gone that route as well, who've just done direct primary care. They don't do any insurance. And they've built some pretty successful practices. It took I think direct primary care is becoming more accepted. Um, I have a friend who his business he has catastrophic health insurance, so like surgeries and stuff like that, hospitalization, but he takes everything to a direct primary care provider for all of his employees, and that has saved him thousands and thousands of dollars. And it has saved his employees thousands and thousands of dollars. Because he was, so it depends on what model, what payer mix structure you want to do, depending on what you're in. Now, I can't do direct, I can't do direct care, but there are some practices or specialties who probably could, and it it might be the way to go until we get a single payer system, but I don't know that we're going to get that with the current administration. So.
I would just follow up on that direct primary care. I'm Miloš Ivanovic. I'm working as a hospitalist currently, but there's a lot of colleagues in internal medicine generally. We are thinking, me and a few friends, to open concierge practice or direct primary care practice. However, there are a few obstacles, as you mentioned. You have to have reserves first, and nobody can jump just in the practice and quit the job that is pretty lucrative doing as a hospitalist and traveling. So, do you have an experience or your colleagues? Because we were trying to find out, is it possible to still work as a hospitalist and do direct primary care, but I was not able to find, because then if direct primary care you don't accept Medicare, Medicaid. However, as a hospitalist, you are pretty much obligated to accept those patients because they're majority in the hospitals. So I see like a middle way would be going concierge practice. I was looking through the CMS website, and they literally say there that they won't pay the membership fee for the practice, but the physician himself or herself cannot charge more the patient, like can bill the Medicare, Medicaid, or other insurances just as usual. So actually that can cover like much more than running the practice. If your subscription is $300 and you have 100 people, that's already 30,000. So that's, if you, I'm talking about internal primary care, maybe pediatrics, something with less intensive, that you can have really a skeleton crew, you, one nurse, and something. Or the other question that comes also is additional sources of income. Primary care could theoretically have the small lab, X-ray, physical therapy, something. But then there is a Stark law, and I'm not really familiar with that about, not going to conflict of interest. If you order the labs have to be under the same roof where your practice. So I know it's not your specialty, but if you have experience and you talk with someone that already went through this path, if you can just answer these questions.
Yeah, there's a number of physicians in the city who have done that, and are quite successful. Um, I would refer any and all questions regarding those sort of questions to them. I don't want to speak out of turn or say something that's not right. If you shoot me an email, I will hook you guys up, and then you guys are more than happy to have a conversation, and hopefully they can answer your questions. I do know that he wants to help um, other physicians go that route or figure those problems out. I've sent him a client or two. Yeah, you shoot me an email, and I will definitely pass that information along and hopefully get you two guys hooked up.
Thank you so much, will do.
You're welcome.
What are the most common pitfalls you've experienced in terms of hiring office staff? And who are really like the three core people you must have in the beginning?
The three core, you're going to want to have a strong accountant, somebody who has strong accounting skills that can work through your books and give you reports that make sense. I think a good office manager, somebody who can manage, because you're going to rely on them to manage any sort of personnel issues. And then somebody who's really good at billing and coding. Whether I would at our practice, we farmed out our billing, but we still had somebody in-house that we would kind of use to validate and verify things. And if something got denied or bounced, we would send it to her first before we'd send it back to the agency. Um, uh, and then on top of that, you want a really good scheduler, somebody who understands, time and how long it takes to do something, and doesn't cram too many things in or gives you too long. You want it just right. And then some of the biggest mistakes I've seen, if you don't feel like they fit the job, don't hire them. I don't care if they are your partner's niece, or they're a family member. If it doesn't feel right or they don't check all the boxes, don't hire them. Just it's okay to hire family, but they have to check all the boxes that you need for that position. If you hire them and they don't, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, you're doing them a disservice. I would say the biggest problems I have seen have come from that, at least in my personal experience. And you definitely want to do background checks on anybody that handles your money. If they have access to your revenue cycle, whether it's your bank accounts or handling money or any of those transactions, you definitely want to make certain that you do background checks, criminal and financial. Because if somebody with a credit score of 500 is handling your money, they're going to be a little more tempted to abscond with a few than somebody who has a credit score of 750. Just the way it is. So, just don't put somebody in that place where they can be tempted. I mean, but that doesn't mean anybody's not going to steal from you. One of the ER groups in our city, the lady that was their office manager for decades stole $8-10 million from her, or from them. She stole. She never said sorry, refused to say sorry. So the judge sent her to prison. She was 73 when she got sentenced. So, um, you know, just really do good, strong background checks on everybody, and really think about that, who you want in your office, And do they have your values? Do they mesh with what you believe and want?
That's great advice. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure we'll get any other questions. But thank you again, Dr. Norris. This was incredibly insightful, very eye-opening, and above all, really inspiring that it can be done.
Oh, good.
Maybe not in OBGYN, but in others in other specialties.
I don't know. Well, my best friend's wife, she's solo OB out in Portland, doing very well.
It's good to hear.
So it can be done.
You don't hear of that very often, but
And in fact, the lady that delivered both of my children is solo practice OB in Nashville. Still that way. So probably be easier if they had partners, but it can still be done.
good to know. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. As I said, I dropped the link to the website in the group chat. But feel free to email me if you have any questions or ideas for future journal clubs. I wish you all good night.
Thanks for having me. Good night, guys.
Thanks, Dr. Norris. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.